What up, guys? So today on the podcast, we have Amanda Leve. So, again, it's one of those things where anytime I go to a tournament, like, or I watch one, I typically walk away with like, I want to go talk to that person, because again, with the podcast, it's like, I get to just talk to people. And so I'll find people, a lot of times it goes to their game. Like I'll find people that I find interesting to watch jiu-jitsu wise and compete. Yep. And like, she's one of the female competitors where if I see her competing, I want to go watch her because like she has, I think it's like very much like a fighting style jiu-jitsu where obviously she's an MMA fighter. So, there's a certain sort of mindset that comes into it with MMA, which is like, I'm going to fight you. Right. I'm not going to play it safe. I'm not going to like, oh, let me like just whatever. I'm coming after you. And it's very much her style. Like, it's going to be an entertaining match and she's going to go after it. And so like, she's one of the female competitors. Like I want to go watch her. So when she was competing this at the ADCC Trials, she came up, she won the East Coast. And then in the West Coast, she ended up coming up short because she got injured in the finals match when I think she was winning that match up until she got injured, which again, was a bummer to see it. But we have Amanda Leve here on the podcast with us, and it's going to be a fun one. She'll talk about everything from like the MMA fighting that she did and how she, like the doctor basically told her she can no longer fight. Yep. And kind of told basically what's going on there. And then again, adjusting to jiu-jitsu and kind of how her training, and we talk a lot about her training style and things that she does both mentally and physically for her matches and everything else. And so again, hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast and get a few tips from the podcast. Again, that's kind of to me, like I'm writing down notes and I can look at this thing and be like, some of you guys that are, newer competitors, or maybe you're thinking about competing or whatever it might be. She shares a lot about her process for this. And I think it could be useful for people to listen to. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the podcast with Amanda. And again, thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Charlotte's Web CBD. If you guys have never tried CBD, or if you would like to try CBD from Charlotte's Web, again, they are one of the premier companies out there that make a top shelf CBD product. Again, they are third-party tested, so what's in the bottle and the label is what's in the bottle. That's it, right? It's not a roll of the dice like it can be with certain CBD products because of the fact that it's not regulated by the FDA. They have a lot of different products, everything from balms to the tinctures, which is like the little eyedropper, to gummies and things like that, which they will sometimes infuse with other dietary supplements to sort of help for a particular effect. Like maybe it's focus, maybe it's rest, whatever it might be. So again, check out their website if you want to by going to charlottesweb.com. It's the website, and you can look through their stuff. And if you find something you'd like to try, use the promo code Chewjitsu30, CHEWJITSU 30, and you'll save 30% off your order. Also, big thanks to our buddy Matt at Epic Roll for supporting the podcast. And again, if you guys have never checked out his website, you can go to epicrollbjj.com. He has a ton of great stuff, everything from no-gi gear, rash guard shorts, some of my favorite no-gi gear out there, gis, joggers, hoodies, anything merchandise related, gear related. He has it. He has some really cool t-shirts. And again, he comes up with all the designs that he does. And again, he's a guy that supports a lot of up and coming young competitors that are out there, which I think is pretty cool. And so if you want to check out his gear, go to epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off. Also, guys, if you would like to join our Patreon and support the podcast, then you can do so by going to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join up, you'll get access to the exclusive library that we've created with special editions from all the guests that we've had along with Eugene and I. In addition to that, there's things like narrated roles, seminar recordings, warm-up routines that Eugene's specifically done for jiu-jitsu practitioners at camps that we've done, and a whole lot more. And again, if you guys want to get access to it, it's a very inexpensive price. It just sort of helps support the podcast. And when you do that, obviously you're taking care of the podcast, and you can unsubscribe to it at any time. And you can check that out at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, if you would like to get my daily email and get access to a couple of free resources, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you join up, you'll get access to a couple of free ebooks. One is on developing a game plan, which we talk a lot about that with Amanda here in just a few minutes. The other one is developing strategies for training to basically get the most from your training sessions and adding focus to it. Focus is one of those things where if you want to improve in jiu-jitsu, if you show up, that's important, right? But you need to get focused. You need to have something to focus on, and I'll give you some ideas in that. that particular book. And again, you get those for free. And then upon joining, you'll then get my daily email, which can be everything from jiu-jitsu training tips, diet, weightlifting stuff that I think is interesting to, I mean, the books I'm reading, philosophical ideas that, you know, I find that I want to share, anything and everything. And again, a lot of people enjoy, thousands of people read them every day. And so you can join those groups or join that group at jujitsu.net/join. So with that said, guys, thanks for being here today. Let's talk to Amanda.
So winning East Coast Trials and not knowing if you get an invite, like is that kind of disheartening, or how do you feel? Like, I mean, kind of doing everything you're supposed to do and then not getting an invite initially off the top.
So ironically, I did East Coast Trials because so I found out I couldn't fight MMA anymore like about a year ago in March. So March was a year ago. I found out I was supposed to be in the PFL for like their $1 million tournament.
Yeah.
And Vegas requires more medicals. So they did like an MRI of my brain, and they found like it looks like the blood vessels in your brain essentially, but they found an aneurysm in my brain. So they're like, you can't fight anymore. You could die if it dislodges or go blind.
Wow.
So I was like so upset. So I'm like, you know, I'm not competing ever again. Like because I was so done with jiu-jitsu. I hate to say that, but I was like so done. I was like so happy to be moving on to MMA and stuff. So yeah, so I did East Coast Trials. I was like, you know what? Let me just compete again. Like maybe it'll bring like a fire back in me or something. So I didn't even care initially that I wasn't getting an invite to ADCC. And then after I won and started like just training jiu-jitsu again more and like focusing on that more, I was like, all right, I think I'm going to do West Coast Trials and try to get the ADCC.
So I want to backtrack about this because I didn't know that about it. I saw that like, on your Instagram that, you know, you fought in the PFL. And so is that like, were you like terrified? I've had some MRIs of my brain and had some weird stuff going on. It's a terrifying thing. Like, what was that like feeling? What was that process like for you? And also like, I mean, you're young and like, you know, athletic and not being able to do something you love doing that you had aspirations to do well in.
Yeah, so honestly, I was more upset that I just couldn't fight anymore. I didn't even care about my health. I was like, I don't care. Like, can I just sign a waiver that says I know like, the like, you know, side effects of this, or like I know the danger of it. But right. I literally felt like a part of me like died, which sucks because like my whole like ever since I was like 13 years old, I wanted to be an MMA fighter. So I was just like, that was my goal, my end goal always. Like don't get me wrong, I love jiu-jitsu and it'll always be like my first love, but like MMA was like what I wanted to do. Now I'm in jiu-jitsu again. I'm like, this kind of is boring. Like, because you know, just like the stakes are so much lower. And don't get me wrong, like I still get nervous for jiu-jitsu tournaments, and
of course,
I expect so much out of myself. But still, I'm like, damn, I wish I could be doing MMA still.
Yeah, the fighting's it's a different animal. I remember I fought in amateur and a little bit of pro. I didn't go too far with it, but I remember getting ready for fights. And again, you always get nervous before a competition, but before you get ready to step into like a cage or a ring with another human being, where I always thought it was so strange, right? Like, or not strange, but it's interesting where in the confines of that ring, we get to do things that are like completely illegal most of the time, right? Like where you would get charged with like some sort of crime for battering someone's face in, but in the ring, it's completely legal and it's okay. But yeah, I feel like when something like that happens, you go through a little bit of an ego death, right? Because you become attached to this identity of a person that you're becoming. I'm a fighter, I'm this person. And then all of a sudden it said, well, you're not anymore because this changed. And then it's kind of like, well, who the hell am I now? Right.
Like, yeah, I just associated with that so much. You know what I mean? I was so proud to be fighting because it was just like a goal that I wanted for so long. Like, dude, I remember the one time I was buying like groceries after an MMA fight. So I was still shredded. And the guy was like, damn, what do you do? Do you like do CrossFit or something? And I'm like, no, I'm a professional fighter. And I was like, damn, that's so cool. I love it.
And how old are you now?
I'm 27.
Okay, yeah, so still relatively young. So with the aneurysm thing, so is that kind of like not a big deal anymore, or is it just one of those things where, you know, because I mean, we still get knocked around in the head a little bit when we're grappling. I mean, if you charge in for someone and you butt heads or whatever, is it just basically like cross my fingers and hope everything's okay, or is it just kind of like the doctors said, you know, you can do this and it should be all right?
The doctor said I should be okay with grappling because it's not repeated trauma to the head as like
Okay.
MMA would be. Like I think they were more nervous about like the consistent punches that you're getting that you could receive in an MMA fight.
Mhm.
And then like another problem is too, like it's like the aneurysm was like in a place where like it was in a bad place in my brain. So like I talked to so many people, they're like, oh, don't worry, like they'll eventually clear you. Like on my MRI, it showed up that I had like a centimeter aneurysm too. Like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like everyone, dude, there were so many UFC fighters that were telling me this because I trained at Marquez MMA with like Sean Brady, Jeremiah Wells, Andre Petrosky, like Pat Sabatini, like all the UFC guys. So, and a couple of them were like, yeah, don't worry about it. You know, you'll get cleared. And then when I like talked to the doctor, they're like, oh no. So like if this was anywhere else on your brain, you'd be fine. But because it's on the spot that it is, you can't do it. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, dude. This thing's like a centimeter big or millimeter big, I mean. And it's on the one spot that I can't be. I'm like, well, what are the chances of that? But
that's wild.
Were there any other options, like any kind of surgical, anything they could do possibly? I'm sure you kind of went through the gamut. Was there anything they could do to like maybe make it not as intense or make it something to where you could possibly fight? Is there any options out there?
They said that they only operate on them if they're 3 millimeters or bigger. And since mine's so tiny, like the risk is not worth it. Like basically aggressive brain surgery isn't worth the 1 millimeter aneurysm. So now I get like yearly checkups to make sure it's not growing, which they said it's not going to grow. And then I will probably go my whole life without knowing it's there. Also more annoying. I'm like, can I just get the 3 millimeters and then we get surgery and then I'll be back in the But yeah, it's cool though, because like again, like I said, I'm like happy to be back in the jiu-jitsu world now, even though I was a little reluctant at first. You know, because I just am a competitive person, so it's just I feel like it just fuels like the fire like of like the competitiveness for me. So it's cool that I can still do it.
When did you get started training? You know, like did you get started with jiu-jitsu first? Was it striking or wrestling or whatever? Like what got you started in grappling and fighting?
I was 11 and my dad would watch UFC all the time. My dad and my uncle. And then they eventually signed my brother up for classes first. And they saw like how athletic it was. Like they were doing push-ups, sit-ups. And I was like a super athletic kid. My dad was like, oh my God, she would be so good at this. So they just signed me up and then I just ran with it.
And so when you got started, was it just like basically get in there? And then when did you start sort of thinking to yourself, okay, I want to fight? And along those same lines, how old were you when you got your first fight?
So I in like Strike Force when I was probably like 13 years old. And when I saw that, and that was like the first big women's MMA fight. I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely want to be an MMA fighter. And then I like just kept training. I always did striking on and off, but I was always consistent with jiu-jitsu. And eventually my problem with MMA fights with amateurs was I couldn't get anyone to fight me because they would see my jiu-jitsu background. So the Grapplers Quest Naga, like when they were like huge back in the day, especially Grapplers Quest, they used to have like a camera guy on the mat at all times.
Oh yeah,
post videos on YouTube and stuff. So I had like videos from when I was a kid that have like millions of views on YouTube of like my matches against like boys. But it's just like annoying because like I don't even get a profit from that. I'm like Grappler's Quest gets it. But so then like literally I would get a fight, they would accept it. The next day I would get a call like, oh, they don't want to fight you. I'm like, why? Like, why are you, if you're not gonna fight people, why are you in MMA? I don't understand. I'm like, if you want to give me the best person, give me the best person. Like I know I'm gonna have to fight them eventually. So it was really very frustrating for the first couple of years. So I only ended up having 2 amateur fights and then I went pro.
It's a lot tougher at the amateur level. Like people are a bit more like flaky because at the amateur level, you get a lot of people that really, I mean, I don't know what it's like up there where you're at, but from some of the city or some of the states that I've seen around where it's like, you know, at the amateur level, you get a lot more people that aren't really that serious about it, right? Like they want to get in there, they want to get a fight or two, or they just want to be the guy that like is in the ring so they can like kind of talk about it. But then, you know, you'll get a handful, like let's say if you have like a full card of maybe let's say 12 to 14 fights, you'll get about 5, 6 people, maybe more, somewhere in that range. But, a small minority of those people are going to be the super serious people like yourselves. And then a lot of them are just like, all right, like we want to get a couple fights. We're going to fight once or twice, never going to fight again. Or, you like, I feel like in a lot of organizations, you'd have like their sort of their guys that they would just, I mean, they'd be like, like 10 and 30 or something. They're just fighting every other weekend just to do it, but they're not really that serious about training. And I remember I had the same thing when I first started fighting. It was like back in 2006 and I was a purple belt and like nobody wanted to fight me because they were like, well, you're going to grapple. I'm like, well, I'm not and it's kind of like the grappling thing. I'm like, I'm just going to choke you out. I'm not going to knock you out of the punch. It's not going to be that bad. Just like, let me choke you. It's not so bad. But it's a lot more tough, I think, at the amateur fighters to get for the tougher people to get people to sign up,
especially for women too, like because the pool is so much smaller.
It's the same for guys though, dude. It's like it's the same thing. Like if you get at the amateur level, if you get someone that's really good at something like striking, whatever, jiu-jitsu, it's just like it scares people off. And it's like, you guys want to fight. This is what this whole thing's for. Why are you running from this?
Yeah, it was so frustrating. So I ended up having my first MMA fight at like 19, 20. And then yeah, I had 2 amateur fights, then went right to the PFL, which was cool because the PFL was just like, they had me on like an undercard, and it was cool that they just were so willing to, sign me on when I'm literally a debut professional fighter with like no amateur record. So I'm really grateful for them. They were so cool to work with.
What did you love about MMA specifically? I mean, obviously we talked about the stakes being a little higher. You can get injured you can get injured in jiu-jitsu as well, but the risk is probably higher in MMA. Like, was there something that you really loved about it? Like aspirations? Why did you want to be an MMA fighter specifically?
Mostly because I think it's cool to be a well-rounded mixed martial artist. I love being like a specialist in jiu-jitsu, but like being well-rounded is just something I think that is so cool. Like George St. Pierre, like when he was like first on the scene, like he was the first one to like really put everything together, right? Like the wrestling, the striking, it was just insane. So I like always like loved that aspect of it. And then also I just loved like the grind of like getting ready for an MMA fight. Like again, just the stakes are higher. You're working so much harder. It's just so much more tough on the body, mentally. There would be practices where mentally I was just completely broken. And like, I don't even know if jiu-jitsu practices ever mentally broken me, even remotely close to what an MMA practice has done to me. So I just like the mental toughness aspect of it too.
Yeah, the MMA training is just a lot tougher because you have in the back of your mind, you're getting ready for a fight with another human being. So there's a little bit of, there's a certain amount of fear, like not crippling, but a certain amount of fear, like I need to prepare for this. I need to be in shape for this, because you don't want to end up, your cardio is not there, or you're taking punches or whatever. And so that's always pushing you during fight camp. And then, so you're already pushing yourself hard. And then a lot of times, I don't know about you, I would get to like these points where I would sometimes push myself a little too hard. And then I would, like, by the end of the week or something, I could feel it. I needed a day off because I would be getting like tagged more than I was used to, or like guys were getting the better of me. And then I'm playing that game inside of my head, man, am I getting worse? What's going on? Am I getting ready for the fight? It's like, it was just such a more of a mental thing. Whereas when you're grappling, you're like, let's go do it. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, exactly. And like MMA, actually, I will say, I feel like the MMA training has transferred over really well to jiu-jitsu, just because I feel like the MMA training has taught me to be neutral to practices now. So like not to look at practices like, oh, that was good practice or that was a bad practice. Like it was just practice, because like at the end of the day, you could go out, you could have the best camp of your life and have the worst performance of your life, or you could have the worst camp of your life and then have the best performance of your life. So the camp practices don't really matter. It's going to be when you, or if you can show up on the fight day.
Yeah.
Is there something that I think you would do to make sure like that you were your best on fight day or competition days, or kind of a ritual you went through? Is there some kind of sequence of things, or something that you kind of felt or prepared yourself in a certain way to make sure that like your practice transferred well into like, the actual competition?
So before my first professional MMA fight, I actually started working with a mindset coach, and I think it was like the best thing I ever did. It like gave me just such a better perspective of competing in general. So one of my favorite things he had me do actually was he had me write down all my fears on a piece of paper and then and burn it like a couple hours before I like fought. And he was like, listen, all your fears on that paper, once it burns, they're gone. Like you can't, you know, mentally just like discard them. And now it's like one of my favorite practices to do. So definitely that. And making sure I get a great warm up. I think like people in jiu-jitsu don't warm up. So, like I never see anyone really warm up the way like an MMA fighter should, or even like wrestlers. Wrestlers warm up to where they're like drenched in sweat. And I'm like, jiu-jitsu people literally are lackadaisical that they just go out there and do, you know? So, you know, like making sure I get a good warm up, it was like such a big game changer for me too. Cause I feel like, you know, you're just turning your muscles on. And dude, even my last MMA fight, it was like an all girl card and I was like in the back warming up and I was the last fight to go. So all the other girls were done fighting and they were watching me warm up and they were just like, jaw dropped to like the floor. Cause I was watching them warm up and I'm like, I was judging the hell out of them. I'm like, dude, this is how you're warming up for an MMA fight. Like you're a professional, you know, like warm up professionally. I don't know. Like I was just like so disappointed. And then they were watching me warm up and I literally, they were like in awe of how I was warming up because I was like, you know, just turning everything on, making sure I was like, you know, everything's firing right. And then like mentally it just like puts you in a good place because, you know, you're your second round of the fight instead of going in there in the first round and you're kind of still not used to seeing the punches and stuff like that. So getting a good warm up is 100% one of my favorite things now for preparing for stuff.
Yeah, it's huge. It's like one of the things where like I'll wear a heart rate monitor as I'm getting myself warmed up nowadays where I can see like because first off, obviously you can feel it, but like now I know, okay, I want to touch the red line for a little bit because I want to like I always think of it as like have my first match, like you said, second round. Like I want to have my first match before I have my very first match.
Yeah.
So this way you're drenched in sweat. You're all that adrenaline is gone because you listen to a lot of guys. They'll say they come out really flat or they had an adrenaline dump during the match, right on their first match. And a lot of that stuff can be mitigated if you have a really good warm up and then enough time to cool down afterwards and then to sort of get ready. You'll go in the match. You'll feel fresh. You'll feel sharp. And, you know, a lot of us, when we go into the gym, we usually don't have our best round the first round. It's usually like the second roll or the third round or whatever that we're doing, sparring or rolling. That's when we like we're warmed up and we have some really good rounds. We feel sharp. So I think a lot of people, like you said, would do better by doing a really hard warm up first, really get themselves taxed, and then to get ready for their match, opposed to the lackadaisical kind of bouncing around a little bit, but you're not even sweaty yet.
100%.
Going to your jiu-jitsu, when did you so like I found you originally like I first saw saw you when you had the Gabi match. That was the first time I was like, who is this? Right. Like, and I don't know if that was an experience that you've heard from a lot of people. But that was like the first time where I was like, oh, holy crap. That was this woman just like dominated her. And especially in the sense, I don't know if she was backstage, but Gabi sort of came across early in that match kind of as cocky, arrogant. And then like, you know, basically dominated the match, and so you know everybody's like cheering. And I was there, and then since then I've been like one of those things where I was like ADCC Trials. I'm like, if I see you compete, I'll see people going, and there's generally people that I find that I like their style, and yours is like you can tell you've got that MMA focus, or you had that MMA focus where your game is very direct. You're not doing anything like super squirrely or weird. You're like basically I'm going to take you down. I'm going to basically smash you and submit you. And so I've really enjoyed watching your style, but I'm curious, is the Gabi match, or was there a different match where you feel like maybe people started to take notice of you a little bit more in the jiu-jitsu world? Was there a match like that?
A little bit when I won trials in 2019. But for the most part, it was definitely the Gabi match. Like I think I gained like 10,000 followers or something after that match on Instagram. So I was like, oh damn. Like literally after I won, I couldn't even like look at my phone because it was literally blowing up. That was pretty cool. And so it was like cool too because like at ADCC Worlds last time, I just went to watch because I wasn't in it. But like there were people that would come up behind me and they'd be like, Amanda Leve? And I would like turn around and be like, yeah, you beat Gabi. And I'm like, hell yeah. So definitely the Gabi match that definitely put me on the map for sure.
That's cool. Was she, and again, we don't have to like badmouth anybody, but like, I was curious, like, because sometimes
Dude, she sucks. I'll badmouth her all day.
Okay. Okay. Well, I just don't want to put someone on the spot, but my thing is like, you know, looking at it from the outside in, right? Like there's some people that put on like a show, like they'll like talk crazy stuff, and then behind the scenes they're like, hey, it's all good, man, I was just trying to sell tickets kind of thing. But she came across as like super arrogant, and I think for a lot of people that's what's always kind of like, that's what made it kind of satisfying, because it's like, you know, you're this, you know, big giant like really strong person, and you basically bully people around, and then, you know, I mean, you're not like, you're not weak or super small, but compared to her, obviously she's a big lady. And so when you guys are standing there, there's this person that's been bullying people around, was talking trash, sort of being cocky and arrogant. And then there was this smaller woman that just goes in there, and I mean, you put it to her. And so for all of us watching, it was kind of like, you know, it's the underdog / the David and Goliath match. And so it was like such a fun match to watch. And so I didn't know if she was cool before or if she was just completely like shitty the whole time.
Yeah, no, she was shitty the whole time. So
Okay.
it was like the day before. So it's like funny because I never had a problem with her before I fought her. Like I always see her win stuff, and I always knew for the most part she won because of her size. Like in all reality, I think everyone would agree that her jiu-jitsu isn't really like great. She wins mostly just from her size. So the day before, we all had a weigh in, even though my division was 145 and up. So most of us weighed in at like between 150 to, I think the heaviest was Kendall at like 180. Okay. And I was 155 at the time. And so Gabi just didn't show up to weigh-ins at all. She just miraculously strolled in completely after weigh-ins were done. And I'm like, that's annoying, because I already knew I was going to fight her first, because I knew I was going to be seated last. I knew she was going to be seated first. And I'm like, you know what? That's really freaking annoying, because I want everyone to know her weight too. Like I want to know her weight because I'm going to be fighting her or grappling her. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I want to know her weight. So then I'm like mad, and I'm not a controversial person at all. Like I don't like to rock the boat usually, but that just like annoyed me, especially the way she walked in too, like so arrogant. And we like they had like a press conference. They had the table out, and they were revealing the bracket, you know, in front of us at real time, so we would see everything. But I already knew I had her, and they wanted our live reaction of it. So then they like asked Gabi what she thought of having me as a first match. And I don't forget what she said. She didn't really say anything crazy. And then they asked me, and I was like, basically, I'm like, I don't understand why she didn't weigh in. And then Gabi got like so angry, was like, like calling me like, are you allowed to curse on here? I don't know.
Yeah, you can curse. It's fine.
I mean, not that it's cursed, but like a vulgar word. She was calling me like a pussy and like saying like that kind of stuff. And she's like saying it wasn't in her contract to weigh in or something. I don't know. It was something ridiculous. So I'm like, whatever. Next day, she sees me. She's like super ignorant. We go out, have the match. And the part where I know she's a shitty person is because the amount of messages I've got from former students of hers after I fought her that said, thank you for beating Gabi. She was so mean to me when I was at her school as a student. I probably got like 8 or 10 messages from former students of hers. And then I had a seminar in Salt Lake City like 5 months after I fought her, and they just like said like Amanda Leve, notorious for beating Gabi Garcia. She messaged this school and said Amanda Leve is not a real champion. She did not really beat me. I had a problem. I had this health issue. I had this health issue. I'm like, are you serious right now? And I asked the school, I was like, can I post this screenshot? Because they sent me the screenshot. You know, we're not trying to rock the boat or anything. And I'm like, I should have just I should have just posted it, because I'm like, I couldn't even believe she actually went out of her way to make a message to this tiny school in Salt Lake City that was having me as a step for a seminar. It was just crazy. So
it's so bizarre
anymore.
Did you approach that match like any differently? I mean, obviously she was a good amount larger than you, but like, you're like, I'm just gonna keep the same game plan that I always keep, or did you try to strategize a different way to kind of make sure you could beat her or give yourself the best chance?
So the night before, we game planned for her, and when I shit you not, like everything she did was exactly what we game planned for. I always say this, I'm like, it's almost like we wrote a script, said, here, Gabi, act it out with me. And because she did legit everything we expected her to do. And every move we went over the night before, I hit in the match. It was actually insane. It was like a movie. I couldn't even believe it. So that was super cool because yeah, we just focused on like making sure that when we were on the feet, you know, I was clearing my head. And then I think this is again where the MMA training came in handy, was because footwork. Like I was able to just constantly keep like a good like pace on my feet, like going back and forth, cutting angles, which would you do it for striking normally. And then when we got on the ground, we knew she was going to sit guard because she's been sitting guard recently in her last couple fights before she fought me. And then we just, you know, practice like throwing the feet over her head because we knew she's so big that she's going to have to roll, exposes her back. And my whole game plan is usually just always get to people's backs. But for her specifically, we were like, we got to get to her back.
Yeah, because if you're going like chest to chest or mount or something, it's going to be hard to keep her pinned down because she's so big. But if you can get to her back, you know, you get your arms around someone's neck, it doesn't really matter how big they are, how strong they are.
Yep, exactly. I will say though, when I was choking her and she got her fingers in, dude, I felt like I was choking like a tree trunk. Like there was no give on this choke at all. And I'm like, damn, I'm gonna have to ride this one out. And it was like 15 minutes. And she had to, like, she was definitely like 265, 270. There wouldn't be anything. If she was heavier, I wouldn't even be surprised at that because, dude, she didn't even look like, sometimes she looks like a little bit more, I wouldn't even say like in shape, but like in shape, quote unquote. But like this one, she looked like sloppy for it. Like, so I think she was definitely heavier. But again, 100 pounds heavier than me, which is also ridiculous because I'm like, you'll never see like guys going against someone 100 pounds heavier than them. Why are we having to go against people that are 100 pounds heavier than us? It's crazy.
Do you think like, I mean, you're probably the majority of your training partners were men. So, I mean, you probably got used to training with people bigger, maybe even stronger than you. Like, do you think that was a major advantage for you, especially when you go against women?
100%. I was always lucky because, you know, I mean, I hear people that have bad experiences, like females in gyms having bad experiences, but like growing up, I was like, I would be the only kid and only girl in a class full of men, and they always treated me like awesome. You know, I never had any issues. They were all like big brothers to me for the most part. And then like even now, like I have such a great group of, you know, men that I train with at my gym. We have like one or two other girls, but for the most part, it's just all men. So yeah, definitely an advantage training with guys because it's hard to find even high level girls that are even heavier. Like, I mean, finding a girl in my area that's like around 160 pounds is hard. Most of the girls around me are like 125, 135, and like maybe the heaviest is 145. So definitely training with men that were bigger was definitely a help for me in that match.
Yeah, and it'll probably, you know, as the years go on, especially with a lot of you, because you think about this, like, it's like there has to be someone to blaze the trail for others to kind of follow. So you were watching Strikeforce, and then you're watching these like women fight, and you're like, oh my God, I want to do that. And then 10 years later, okay, you're fighting, and then now you're in jiu-jitsu grappling. And so now, I mean, there's going to be like young women. I've got like some younger girls that are even training at the gym now that are watching, you know, grappling people compete, right? They're like, oh, I want to do what they're doing. And so probably in the next, you know, 5 to 10 years, you're going to start to have a lot more women. And hopefully at that point, they'll be able to start to expand the brackets for you guys. Because even like ADCC and everything else, it's like your brackets are relatively small just because maybe it's there, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem like the depth is there yet. For some of like, especially, you know, it's even like that for guys sometimes where like, you know, the more extreme of the brackets, the bigger you go or the smaller you go, the less people they're like, there's more people that sort of average sort of middleweight. And then as you get onto the extremes, it's more people, but hopefully people like you will be able to like kind of put out a beacon for the other women, say, hey, you guys can do this too if you want to. So join us and make more of the female grapplers out there.
Hell yeah. I mean, even if you look at like the opens now, like the amount of girls at these opens, like little girls is insane, you know? So it's definitely cool to see the sport growing.
Do you see yourself now like as maybe one of the leaders, like in maybe even women's MMA, or maybe becoming a coach? Is that something you want to do down the line, since you can't like fight anymore, but like maybe even coaching to kind of scratch that itch a little bit of that competitive nature?
Yeah. So I still coach. Every other week I coach at this school called Freedom Jiu-Jitsu. And I love the kids there. And like, I always enjoyed coaching the kids more than the adults because the kids usually compete and then they'll always hit the stuff that you show them in the tournament. So it's very cool and like super satisfying to like have that, you know, that connection with the kid and then seeing them, you know, go out there and perform the way you like expect them to or you want them to. But for right now, I'm like, I'm okay with the coaching every once in a while just because I'm competing still. Maybe down the line I would like to compete, but I mean, coach, but I'll see eventually maybe.
So when you're getting ready for a, you know, a jiu-jitsu match, obviously there might be some similarity there with fighting and stuff like that, but we'll talk more about the jiu-jitsu side since that's where you're moving towards. When you're getting ready for like an upcoming super fight or an upcoming tournament, whatever it might be for competition, you know, along with there's always rolling and stuff like that. And that always has its importance. Do you do any drilling or do you do a lot of situational work? Like, what do you do to like sharpen your game that you're going to bring into those matches?
I'll definitely do positional rounds. I definitely try to game plan for the people too. So a lot of people know him because he works with ADCC a lot, but Jay Regalbuto, he is probably the most knowledgeable human being on planet Earth with jiu-jitsu. I've never saw anyone that like watch as much tape as he does. And the amount of knowledge he has on every single person, what their game, what their style is just absolutely absurd. So like even the last couple of weeks, I've just been going over his house. We've been like watching film on different people, and like he'll point out like what they do really well, and like, you know, maybe what they're doing like 30 seconds before, like what they're hitting and like how they're setting stuff up. So definitely like I feel like film study has been a newer aspect I've been adding. But definitely positional rounds and situational stuff.
Yeah. And film's probably, you know, it's always important for everyone, but especially like when you start to work up to say a higher level of a particular division or whatever it is, you know, it becomes one of these things where you're probably going to see, you know, a certain number of people over and over again. You know what I mean? Like when you look at like certain matches, you'll see these people sort of linger in these divisions and they'll repeatedly go against one another for, you know, for several years. And so it's really important to learn someone's game because, you know, all of us, you know, we have like a handful of techniques that we do really, really well, handful of positions that we do really well. And then everything else, we just kind of know it, but there's like this specific thing that we do really, really well. And so if you can kind of have that in your mind and have a game plan for that stuff against your opponent, that's going to be useful.
Yeah. And actually that's why I'm like pretty happy I'm in the middleweight class now, because I went against a lot of because I'm usually in the heavyweight division.
Yeah.
And I went against a lot of those girls already in that division. So I'm pretty excited because I've only went against one girl in the middleweight division. So it'll be cool to see like new competition. They're just like completely different than heavyweights. Heavyweights are usually like very, you know, heavy. They like to stay on top, get position. So I think it'll be neat to see different styles for once.
What are you doing for like, do you still get competition nerves, or is that pretty well managed since like you've done MMA and that's probably more nerve wracking than grappling?
So MMA is definitely more nerve wracking, but I still get so nervous for jiu-jitsu. Just because not that I'm nervous. Not that I'm scared of the person. I just have such high expectations for myself. You know what I mean? Like my thing is like, I want to perform at my best because when I'm at my best, I believe I'm the best in the world. So like not living up to my potential in my head is like my biggest fear of when I'm competing for jiu-jitsu.
What do you do like, so when you do have those thoughts or fears or in you know, some insecurities, what do you do to kind of, how do you kind of get yourself, besides, you know, kind of burning your fears, like what do you do like maybe an hour before your match or even like as you're getting ready to step on the mats?
I just like if I start to feel like my thoughts are going like haywire, I just start repeating like mantras to myself. So I have like certain mantras that I'll just literally just keep repeating to myself over and over again to like brainwash myself so that I'm only focused on like those mantras, like those positive mantras versus like focusing on my nerves.
I like that idea. Brainwash yourself. I've said it before to people like, you know, like the world's basically trying to brainwash you, you know, like trying to tell you about, I mean, this is just life in general, right? They're telling you certain stories. Like, you know, you should probably take a little bit of an active approach in that and brainwash yourself in a productive way.
Yes, exactly.
What's that?
I said exactly, productive way.
Yeah, because like the world's trying to brainwash you. Then, the negative loop happens in our brains. And again, if it's one of those things where if you don't have something, it becomes like the weapon to counter it, right? Like if you get into that negative loop, it's really easy to basically get into where you start repeating this. What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? Whatever. Whereas if you have a mantra, this is something I've talked to a lot of people and competitors and stuff like that on the podcast, and even myself. Like everyone like seems to kind of do a lot of the same stuff. And one of the things that seems like with a lot of successful competitors is they get like a little mantra, just something it's unique to them, like that they repeat over again in their head. Like one of my guys, Brandon, when every time he competes, it's I'm more than this, right? And so he started using that back when he was competing in college wrestling and for championships and stuff. And he's like, I'm more than this match. So no matter what happens, like this match is whatever, but I'm more than this. And so no matter what, he can kind of go out there and be like aggressive and, play his game rather than worrying about like what happens if I don't win or whatever. I
like that one. That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of mantras. Like I tell everyone to like find a mantra that works for them. Like I always like, I look great. I feel great. I am great. So like, that's like my big one. And then like, I'll even have like the kids I coach do it before they compete. And I also do like my Superman pose. So like if I'm like to like make myself feel more confident, I'll like make sure I'm standing up straight, my hands are on my hips, and I'm like confident. Like how like a superhero would stand.
Oh
like, try to like imitate that too. So like not even just mental, like physically, I'm just trying to like physically show that I'm like confident too.
Well, they did studies on that where they took people and they had them sit in sit or stand in certain postures. And like, if they stood more erect, like you said, like what do they call it? Arms akimbo, where their arms are on their hips and they're basically like standing straight up. Or if they're up like in a V, like then basically they would get them to stand like that. They noticed that like sort of hormonal changes happened where like if the person was sort of their shoulders were rounded and their body language said that they were depressed, that like their body was more likely to do that, right? So it was almost like this thing where, through your body, like you can sort of, obviously if you're ultra depressed, you putting your hands on your hips not going to do it. But it's just one of those things where, again, if like you said, if you're like looking like you feel good and you're standing here and you're telling yourself that, it gets your mind to sort of follow suit. Oh, I guess our hands are on our hip. We're standing in a good position. Our back is straight. I guess we feel good.
Yeah.
And they even did like studies where they took people and they like, this is across cultures where like whenever they were like sort of experiencing something positive, whether they won or they were doing something well, everyone stands up more straight and they become either like sort of vertically and horizontally bigger. Whereas if people are sort of having a negative sort of outcome, they typically begin to shrink inward. And that's like across cultures. That's not something that's just like in the West. That's like everywhere.
Yeah. I saw that study. That's literally why I started standing like that. It's funny you mentioned that study.
I forgot what book. Like she did a TED Talk and then she did a book, but I can't remember who it was. But I remember reading about the study. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, posture and body language is huge, right? Like if you're getting ready to go against your opponent and they're like crouched down, they're not standing upright, they look kind of scared, like that's gonna give you a little more fuel. You're gonna feel like, all right, I got this. I feel like I think that, I mean, that's so important because I think not just to make yourself feel better, but also like if you see your opponents kind of not really showing that posture, you're going to feel probably more confident. You're going to feel like they're breaking. The same thing on the mat. So you can feel people when they start to break. If you start pressuring them and, getting the better, and you see people maybe sometimes give positions up. I think it's the same kind of concept.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So it's funny you said that because there was one time I was going against a girl and I looked over on the other side of the table and I saw her and I was like, oh my God, she's already mentally broken. I could just tell by the way she was standing. I was like, oh my God, like she already lost before we even stepped from the mat. Yeah, I think posture is everything for sure.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I had a similar match where me and this guy, we went for, it was like I was a brown belt, he was a black belt. We're going against each other. It was a 10-minute match. We both had an advantage. So at the end, it was like, we went into overtime. And then I remember getting up and my arms are so like, I mean, lungs are burning, hands are curled over. I can barely grab anything. Like we've all been there before. And I watched him get up and he was like getting up really slow and he was hunched over. So I started running a lap around him because I just wanted him to think that I wasn't tired. And, like you said, in your mind, you're thinking you're done. You're like, we're both tired, but you're showing it. So like, I'm going to beat you now. And then, afterwards it was like 2 minutes and I got a submission.
Yes.
So for kind of going along those lines about like tired, whatever, you know, because that's one of the things that'll like break you in any sort of combat sport is like not having good cardio. Is there anything that you do to like boost your cardio? Obviously there's rolling a lot more, pushing yourself during those rounds, but is there anything that you do to supplement your cardio?
Yeah, so I take pride in my cardio for when I like fought and when I compete. I usually do circuit training. So I go to strength and conditioning. And I'll have like he'll have me do different exercises as hard as I can for 15 seconds, 20 seconds at a time. And then like do like a 10-second break, but like he'll have me like shadow boxing in between or like in my wrestling stance in between. And then another 15-20 seconds of like whatever the next exercise is, super hard, super fast. So I feel like that just constant, you know, like push, like active break, push, active break is no, just killer. It like ramps my cardio up to like another level.
How many rounds of that would you do, or like how many days a week do you even do that type of training?
So I'll only do it once. I'll do it at the end of the week, and then I'll do like 3 5-minute rounds. So I used to do it specifically more for MMA. And they just gave me such good cardio that I just use it for jiu-jitsu now too. So like once I found out I was in ADCC, I was like literally said to him, I'm like, I'm an ADCC. Can we start up the conditioning circuits again? So my first one will be on Friday, and I'm not looking forward to it. The first like couple ones like suck, and then like I mean they always suck, but like the first couple ones are like such a shock to your body that it's just like, you know, after the first 3, you like can prepare yourself a little bit more for it, but the first one that you do after a long time of not doing them is just. It's like death.
It's I remember like I hadn't competed for quite a while, and I did a tournament a couple months ago. Well, I was actually on vacation, and they had one of those like manual treadmills, and I was like, I have to do this. Like I would make myself. I was literally on vacation, like hanging out on the beach, and I would force myself to go and do it. And I think it really helped my car. It helped my mind a lot too, because it was freaking hard. And I was pushing myself. I thought I was going to die, but I was like, I know it's going to be good for me to do this. And I think there's something about like mentally pushing through that. I think is really, besides the cardio, just your mind gets a little stronger too by getting through those sessions.
Yeah. And those manual treadmills are like the actual, they're so terrible. I mean, oh man, like talk about cardio. It's just like another different level of cardio. Like you think the treadmill it makes the treadmill like a regular treadmill just seem so easy compared to like a manual treadmill where you actually have to power it yourself. Oh
yeah, it's horrible. And like, you know, the fast, it still gives you that same resistance. The faster you go, you're still getting the same resistance. It's like, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah,
we should get one at the gym, by the way.
Those are fun. I'm good. It get tore up.
I'll get one.
Yeah. What do you do? Are you doing anything for besides like for like strength and conditioning? Like, are you doing like weightlifting, like weight training, and just kind of keep yourself healthy? And also just like, is there a certain type of training you like to do for jiu-jitsu, maybe even jiu-jitsu specifically as opposed to MMA?
Yeah, so I definitely weightlift. I love weightlifting. I just got done a workout the other day, like just lifting, and I'm like, damn, I can't believe people go their whole life and don't know what it feels like to get a good lift in. Like I always feel the best after I get a solid lift in. Yeah. And I've been lifting since I was 11 years old. So it's like part of me now. Like I honestly, working out's like a mood regulator for me. If I don't get a workout in, like I will be so miserable the whole day. It's so terrible. So like I always need to do something. But yeah, definitely weightlifting is probably my favorite. And I mean, for the most part, I think it transfers great to jiu-jitsu. I don't do anything like crazy. Like, you know, if I'm like I'll lift heavy, but like I'll still do like more reps and like focusing on like, you know, maxing out. Like I never max out on anything.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely lifting is my favorite.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Lifting is kind of my like, I don't know. It's like kind of like my Zen time where you just like, you go in, you do the work. I try to lift in the mornings if I can, because then I feel like the rest of the day is so much better. And I got that in, you know, and I just feel in such a good mood afterwards.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, use something productive and also something challenging and difficult, and you get some of that.
See, I don't know what it is. It's not production or anything. It's literally just when I'm done lifting, I just feel good. I like it. Like it makes me, it's like, it makes me happy. And
you feel more relaxed. I feel more relaxed.
Oh, of course. I feel happy. I feel relaxed. I feel like excited. I feel good, you know? So again, but that's my association with it. Like, I'm sure it is yours for yours too. I'm always so surprised when people are like, I hate lifting. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I guess we all hate certain things, but I freaking love it.
Well, I think it's some of it could be like doing something. You're used to doing difficult things. You're used to doing difficult things. Like it's just, you do something, completing something that's challenging, pushing yourself. I think you're always going to feel better. Like you accomplished something.
100%. And like, I started swimming recently too.
Nice.
That's been like cool too, because that gives you like a hard workout and you feel like tired after, but your body still feels so solid, which is cool. So I've definitely been enjoying the swimming, especially because that's also very zen-like, because you're just like moving through the water. You like hear the water when you're underwater. You know, you're in your own little world. And I like that you can't like, I mean, they have headphones for you to swim with, but I like that you don't have music or anything. So it's like just you in your own head, and it's like your time. So I like swimming too. I should say that.
Yeah, you can't like sit there and be in the middle of the pool, like checking your phone while you're in the middle. Like, you know, with lifting, you could do a set and then sometimes you get on, fiddle around with your phone or something, or listen to music. Whereas with that, you just have to be in your own thoughts, and you have to have a break from that, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
When it comes to training and recovery, like, is there anything that you like to do in particular? I mean, everybody has their little tricks or their own preferences. Is there anything that you do for recovery? Like when you're going through a hard training camp of some sort, whether it be, you know, jiu-jitsu or MMA, is there anything that you do in particular to try to help aid your body in recovery?
I do like the cold plunge, sauna. And then like, if I need a day off, I'll take a day off. Like, I'm not one of those people that feels like I should say I'll do like a light day of like something, like even a walk. If I go for a walk, I'll do a walk. But I'm not one of those people that has to do jiu-jitsu every day. Like if I need a break, I'll take a break. So definitely knowing when I need to take a break is probably key for me. But again, cold plunge, which is awesome. But I feel like so many people are so culty with it that I even hate saying that I do. You know what I mean? Like everyone just like, oh, cold plunge is like, I don't know. They're just like so diehard about it, which it is so great, but I'm not diehard about it like everyone else is. And then, yeah, I mean, it sucks too, because like that's also cold plunge and sauna. Like I have a bathhouse near my house, so like I'll hit that, and like that kind of rest day is like awesome because like it's mentally challenging to the point where you're like, you know, the saunas are so hot because like it's a bunch of like Eastern European guys in there who are just like constantly throwing the water on the rocks where it's making it so hot in these saunas. So it's like, you know, extreme heat, extreme cold, and like, you know, mentally going through those changes, which is cool. I love like going to like the bathhouse now. It's so sick.
Yeah. It is funny, the cultiness about it. It was like, you know, I guess it was like probably Joe Rogan, and then, you know, afterwards, you know, everybody wants to take their like look at me, guys, I'm jumping in the cold plunge now, and they'll take their little videos and stuff in the morning. And you know, I have one at the house, and you know, I use it a bit here and there, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't need to post about this every single day. Nobody needs to know that I'm taking a cold plunge. It's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Yeah, and people act like it's so hard, like it's so tough, man, to get in the cold plunge. It kind of sucks a little bit, but like I remember we did a training session like at the gym, and then I invited people back to the house, like let's jump into it. And like I had some of my like 12, 13-year-olds that were there at the session. They're like jumping into it. I'm like, this 12, 13-year-old kid can do it. Anybody can do it.
They're fearless
like,
though. You know, kids are fearless, man.
They'll
do anything.
But all it is just like, it's literally you jump into it, and your body for like for about 30 seconds says, get the hell out of this because I'm going to die. And then afterwards you're fine.
Yeah.
Just sit there and just chill. You'll be fine.
Yeah. People just don't like the cold though.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
Yeah. It's so crazy. Like I could try to convince people to go into the plunge, and they're like, absolutely not. I'm like, dude, really? Like it's not that bad. Like once you get used to it, it's not that bad. Everyone's like, absolutely no way. I hate the cold. I'm like, all right, you're missing out.
Yeah. Well, and nobody likes the cold. Like nobody likes getting in there. It's like, just like when you lift weights, you don't actually really like the burn. It's not like you love that part, but you associate that with something, right? Like, you know, you associate the burn or whatever with progress or with your muscles getting better, looking better, that kind of thing. Or, you know, even when you're on a diet, right? Like you don't enjoy eating maybe less food than what you'd like, but you enjoy that, man, I'm looking shredded right now. Or you enjoy the fact that you're not going to have to cut a bunch of water out come fight day. And so I think maybe that's something that a lot of people that do the stuff that we do, you sort of get sort of focused on like sort of the delayed gratification. So you're not really like, this is what I get right now. You're not really worried about that. You're like, I know what this means and what this leads to. And sort of that's what I focus on. I don't know about you, but when you're doing all this training and you're going through all these grinding workouts, do you focus on like what that's going to lead to? And does that make it a little bit easier? Do you have something else that sort of makes it a little bit more bearable?
I just like the satisfaction of doing it after it's done. Like after it's done, I'm like, hell yeah, I just did that. You know, like I just feel good about the accomplishment of like getting through that workout, getting through that cold plunge. And then I do know that it'll help me in the long run, but it's definitely like the gratification I get after the fact of doing something hard.
What tells you, like you had mentioned it earlier about like needing a day off or needing like a rest day? What in like, is your body telling you, your mind telling you, what do you start to sense about yourself, maybe your performance or kind of how you're moving that tells you, all right, I need to take a day off. I need some recovery.
Yeah. So if I'm like super sore or sluggish, that'll be the big indicator. And then also I'll notice if like jiu-jitsu, if I feel like I'm getting like almost like overwhelmed in rounds, like where I'm like not capitalizing on things that I'm usually capitalizing on and stuff like that. Like if I feel like I'm like just mentally not as sharp as I normally am in jiu-jitsu, then I'll be like, okay, I need to take some time off.
So it's like a timing thing, maybe in some cases, like you can't pull the trigger.
Yep, exactly. Can't pull the trigger, or if I'm like I'm like hesitating on stuff, or even if I'm like doing like stupid stuff that I wouldn't normally do, and I'm like, what the fuck was that? Then like, all right, I need a day. I do, because like people go against like taking days off for jiu-jitsu, but I swear, like sometimes if I take like a day off, a couple days off, it like gets me out of the habit of like things. I'm just say like maybe I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again each match or like each training session. It'll get me out of that like pattern, and then I'll like be able to break that pattern and go to like something new, try new things. And I always like when I come back, I feel like I just have like a fresh mind for grappling.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like jiu-jitsu training in some cases is so like archaic, right? It's a caveman thinking, because you look at like say athletes in other sports that are paid like millions of dollars and they have like a team of trainers around them getting paid a lot of money and they take days off, right? So it's like, if it was a bad idea to take days off while you're doing this hard physical training, those dudes would like, they would be doing it. But they do take days off. And, I think almost everyone's probably had the experience where you were forced to take a day off or two, and then you come back and you feel sharp. You're like, man, I feel good. And it's like, well, imagine if you just did that on a regular basis. When you, like you said, if you start getting really in tune with your body, and when you start to feel the dip, when you're having those moments where you're not putting anything together, the guys that, you normally can handle decently, they're getting the better of you. Just take a break, come back, and then all of a sudden you're back to 100%.
100%. Like actually the week before a fight is always when I felt like the best, because it's like the week where you're usually just cutting weight and you're not really focused on like learning or like sharpening the sword of like, whatever your game plan is. And you're like, you're kind of tapering back on everything. So like the week before a fight when you're just cutting weight, I'm like, damn, I feel so good, because your body's not as beat up. All you have to do is just cut some water weight. I usually only cut like 5 pounds of water weight. So I always felt like so phenomenal when I just tapered back training in preparation of a fight the week before a fight.
That's an interesting question to ask you too. So again, and again, if you do something different, that's fine for jiu-jitsu, but obviously that was for a fight. I see a lot of like young jiu-jitsu guys like that I like students and stuff that I'm working with. And like one of the biggest like battles that I'll have with them is getting them to take a few days off to like, I usually take like a week off of actual rolling, and I just do all my drilling the week of, so I can let my body recover and be like basically sort of amped up on that day to actually compete. So I'll take about 5 days off from actually rolling and just focus on drilling and just sort of getting myself together. But I'll try to at least get the young guys to take a couple of days off, for your jiu-jitsu matches and things like that. If you have like a match coming up on say like Saturday, when's the last day that you'll actually do like hard rolling? And then, like what kind of training or what kind of exercise or activity do you do leading up to the match?
Probably like, I would say Tuesday or Wednesday would be like my last like hard day of like rolls. And then like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'll do like, I might take like one day off and then just like move around the mat of like the game plan that I want to execute. of just like drilling it. But again, like nothing crazy. I'm not usually rolling because I'm like, there's not like, I'm not going to get any better from a couple rolls. Like there's more of a chance I'm going to get hurt than I am going to get better from just doing a couple more hard rolls. So I just really focus on drilling, like the game plan, and I always feel so solid. So it's a good, it works for me.
Question for you. So with your, your jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, I'm curious, what's your favorite takedown and what's your favorite submission?
Single legs. I used to be a big double leg person, but the last competition I was hitting single legs left and right that were super solid. So probably single legs now. And then what was the other question?
What's your favorite submission?
Renegade choke.
Okay.
Yeah. I love the back. Like getting to the back is like my bread and butter. So definitely like there's nothing more satisfying than just like it's like a big hug around there.
A big hug and the other person goes night night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something you do like to get to the back, something you specifically do really well or focus on when you're trying to get back exposure or try to pass the guard to the back?
When I'm just passing the guard, I always try to force them to like turn or like expose their back. And I feel like I'm good at like loose passing, or even like when I get to like when I do eventually get past, I like to get like north south and like come underneath like the one arm and kind of force them to turn to one side. Like I'll literally get under their one arm and north south and just shoot it across their chest so that it eventually gets them to turn to their side. And a lot of people just feel so comfortable, like, you know, like that escape where you like kind of turtle and you sit through again. A lot of people are willing to do that. So I always take the opportunity to get to their back from there. And then also it's cool because ADCC is just like, it almost like encourages going the turtle because it's the neutral position, quote unquote, right? If you get taken down and you turn the turtle right away, it's not points. So I love this rule set for me because it just, everyone will eventually show me their back if I like get them in the position to try to get to neutral, right? So it's cool.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, I have one more question I actually wanted to ask you. Was there it could be a coach, it could be a parent or family member, whoever, who was maybe the most like influential maybe in your martial arts career, jiu-jitsu or MMA? And then also what was it about? Like, was it something unique about them that you felt that they did that kind of inspired you?
I would probably say there's two, and they're both named Jay, ironically. There was a guy I used to take privates with who made me really good at the back, like taking the back. And I use most of his stuff today. And he taught me when I was like 13, 14 years old. And he would just have me drill back takes like left and right. His name was Jason Frawley. And then Jay Rugglebuto, he's been such an influence lately just because, again, he just follows, like, he watches the sport, he commentates. So he like is always watching, right? And then he also just watches for fun at home. And just his like knowledge and like the new school game, quote unquote, that like is like what people do, how they're attacking this, how they're attacking that. Like he's just so up to date on all the information, and he's just so willing to share it with me. And then plus two, he's just like, he's not my manager, but like he could literally be a manager if he wanted to. He just opens up so many opportunities for me ever since I met him. Like getting into this tournament for this amount of money, this tournament. And so it was just like so cool that he was so willing to always help me along the journey. And he's one of my coaches now, but probably those two guys were definitely the most influential in my jiu-jitsu career.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, thank you for being on. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I'll be cheering for you at the championships coming up, and I'm bummed that to hear about the aneurysm that sort of made you be in jiu-jitsu. But from a spectator standpoint, I think it's a lot of fun to watch in the women's division, and you typically go for the kills, so you're a fun competitor to watch. And again, just appreciate you being on. If anybody wants to sort of follow you, find out what you're up to, where is the best place to find you?
At Amanda Leve _MMA on Instagram is the best place. And I'm keeping the MMA until after I win Worlds, because I feel like there's like an MMA mentality too of like being tough that like jiu-jitsu people don't have. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep this name because I feel like it'll like, I don't know, psychologically, I'm like, it'll keep me tough.
Well, you were a fighter, right? So no matter what, like you fought, right? So like you always have that in the thing that like I am a mixed martial artist. I did that stuff, and you know, I'm not a fighter now, but I can still. It's like obviously, if you had to fight, you could fight. So no big deal. You're still that person.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed that podcast. That was a fun one.
Yeah, it was great.
You know, she's tough, man. Fun grappler to watch, and a lot of the stuff that she's dealing with, that's intense, man. I mean, it's something to have your dream of like being this person, and then like you're on the cusp of realizing that dream and having it snatched away.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you know, you're like, yes, I'm going to be a female professional fighter, and I'm going to a pretty good sized show to go fight professionally. And then, oh, by the way, something that you have no control over. Sorry. You're just bad luck.
Yeah.
That sucks, man. You know, and you know, hats off to her for simply just pivoting and being like, all right, I'm going to go all into jiu-jitsu.
Just having a good outlook on, having a good attitude about it. Like just wanting to be I don't know. I think she just she knows what she wants. She knows how to get after it. And I think like it's tough, right? When everything's kind of going your way, going well, and you have something out of your control that kind of derails you. I think but being able to pivot, like you said, and shift to jiu-jitsu, which she kind of was her first martial art, and then do really well and win trials, and probably on her way to winning a second trials in 1 year. I think it's pretty impressive. So
yeah. And I think what's interesting about that, when you think about it, right? Like let's say, just as an example, let's say that Amanda goes on and has like a really great career in jiu-jitsu, right? Then we'll probably look at this as like, oh, it was the best thing that happened. You know, that MMA fighting was the best thing that never happened to you. You know, you'll look at it that way. There's that famous, like, you know, I'm kind of like a little Rock fanboy, right? And The Rock has that whole thing where he wanted to get into football. Sure. And then he didn't make it.
Yeah, he got cut.
Right, he got cut. He's like, it's the best thing that never happened to me, right? And so I think like we all have those moments in our life. If we look at them, like there was a really good book by a guy named Morgan Housel. He wrote Psychology of Money, and then in his newest one, I think it's Same as Ever, I think is the book's name. It's really good. And one of the things he talks about, like in the book, is like there was this ski trip that him and his buddies were doing, and they were back sort of skiing outside of the normal bounds. And like they went down once, and like a little mini avalanche happened, and you know, they were he'd spooked him. Yeah. And then his buddies were like, let's go do it again. And he's like, I don't think I'm going to do it. And he's like, I'll just come pick you guys up. Well, his buddies died. Oh no. And he was just like, man, look at that one split decision, you know. And like we have those little moments in our life where one little thing changes and it sends us on a completely different direction. Yeah. And so with that said, we all have those little moments in our life, and we love the stories where, okay, like one door closed and then this person just went with it and ran in a different direction. And we all have those moments. And so you know, you can think about that. It's like something I tell some people when they'll send me messages, they'll have these struggles. Oh, this happened or that happened. And each one of us have these struggles in our life. And, you know, we love the stories. We love listening to a David Goggins or a Jocko or whomever, right? Some guy just telling us about the struggles they're overcoming. Well, here's yours. Yep. Here's yours. It may not be as cool as, you know, being in the Navy SEALs or whatever to someone else, but like, that's your struggle to bear. That's your thing to overcome, and, you know, run with that and do something with it. You know, that's your chance to grow. That's your chance to become something stronger. And so, you know, it's cool to see her in real time dealing with it, right? Because I mean, she obviously still is like, I want to fight, but she's going this direction because she has to. Yeah. And so every one of us has those moments where a door is closed in our face, and even though we want to go through it, and we can either just fold and just say, well, screw it, I give up. Or you can say, okay, what else can I do? You know, even with your training, you get injured. Okay. So you can't roll hard. What else can you do? You know, there's always something. What else can you do? That's a question to ask. And so anyway, I like that for that reason. She's dealing with a struggle in real time, and dealing with it with a lot of grace and determination. And so it's super cool. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast and got something from it. Again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make this damn thing happen every single week. Charles Webb CBD. Again, it's a great CBD product. It's a CBD product that I use. I like it as an aid to my recovery. I use a lot of things for recovery. Things like, obviously, like, you know, I eat a good diet. I get a lot of sleep. Very regimented about my sleep time. I have, like, me and my wife, we have like the same sleep time almost every night. And I wake up about the same time every morning. and having a toddler running around, like, man, it makes you much more disciplined on your sleep, because you got to be.
Yeah.
But that said, that's really important. The diet's really important. Cutting out a lot of sugar and stuff like that. Like I tell everybody else, like, man, if you cut out a lot of refined sugars and processed foods, you'll probably feel a lot less inflammation and stiffness in your body.
Yeah.
But assuming that you're doing all the basics, right, then you get into supplementation, and CBD has been a really helpful supplement for recovery. And again, you can check out their stuff and see for yourself. I mean, that's always what I tell people. Like I'll have students say, "Does this stuff really work? Is it actually good, Chewy?" You know what I mean? I'm like, well, I like it. Now, you may not like it. I don't know. But, the best thing you can do is try, right, and see what it does for you. And again, you can go to their website at charleswebb.com, try out their stuff. And again, whatever you find that you want to try, just use the promo code Chewjitsu30 for 30% off the order, which will be more than what they typically offer on their website. Also, thanks to my buddy Matt at Epic Roll. He's been a sponsor of the podcast for a long time. And again, he makes really good jiu-jitsu gear. I get my no-gi gear made through him. We're actually getting, I'm working or waiting to get the next prototype of jiu-jitsu rash guards and shorts made. Excited to get those. So those should be in sometime soon for my students, who are also getting our Derby City gear that's made for Matt. That'll be coming in soon. But again, if you guys want to get some new gear, get some new t-shirts, jiu-jitsu related stuff, whatever it might be, go to his website at epicrollbjj.com. The website is, that's the website. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20. And just to let you guys know, I always share this, right? Again, anybody listening, I consider any of you guys, even if you're not my student, like I consider you like an extension of my students, right? And then that said, there's a good chance there's a lot of my students listening to this podcast. Because I went into the gym today, and like several of my students are wearing Epic Roll podcast or Epic Roll gear. Mm-hmm. So I imagine, probably where they heard about it. With that said, when I share stuff like this, I know they're going to hear it. So I'm not trying to people do ad reads and things like that. And none of the products that we ever put on here are they're not crappy products. We've turned down lots of stuff over the years, which is why we don't have because we get random stuff like, hey, put this on your podcast for X amount of dollars. But if it's not something that I actually want to support, I don't do it. So they have to make good stuff. So I share that with you guys. People do ad reads. Sometimes people wonder hey, is this real? It's anything that I'm sharing with you, I feel comfortable sharing with my students, and I love my students. I consider them like friends, and then I have to take care of them. And so, anyway, try to take care of you guys too, and with good stuff. So Jiu-Jitsu20 is the promo code. I don't know if I said that at checkout. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to patreon.com/the-jiu-jitsu-podcast. We have a very inexpensively priced little library of content that you get access to for supporting the podcast, right? That's the exchange. You're supporting the podcast, and in exchange, we will give you access to this library. Have some new stuff coming up in the works, and maybe the next sometime in the summer, we'll see. But for now, the library is there, and you can get access to it. You can subscribe or unsubscribe at any time. And again, for your little bit of money that I think it's 30 cents a day or something is what it equals to, like a quarter, something like that per day. You can support the podcast, and you get access to a large library of content that has everything from seminars and warm-up roles, or not warm-up roles, but warm-up routines that Eugene's put together, to specific little podcast extras with each one of our guests. And you even get an ad-free version of the podcast. Although I've heard some of you guys are psychos and you like listening to the ad reads because they're always kind of random.
Yeah, so we always incorporate something in there, like chat about something random.
Yeah, which is
story.
We're kind of always kind of going on tangential rants periodically with the podcast. So
that's right.
And then, guys, last but not least, if you would like to get more tangential rants that are through text, you might like my email, which is I send out a daily email that goes out to my Chew crew. And to join the Chew crew, it's very simple. You go to my website at chewjitsu.net/join. When you join up, you'll get access to a couple free resources. They're ebooks, right? They're very short. They're I think one is 3 pages and the other one's about 10, but relatively short. But when you get into them, they're just helpful ideas on one to have a game plan, and the other one is on training strategies to develop focus. Both of these ebooks are basically centered around focusing on something, because that's a lot of times what people lack. A lot of people have plenty of information. They have lots of stuff at their fingertips, but they have no focus. They're just training every day, going through the motions, and then they're I don't know why I'm not getting any better, because you're not focusing on anything. Focusing is really important. So again, having stuff to focus on, knowing what your game plan is, like Amanda was talking about, having her game plan in place is super important. If you'd like to get the resources for free, go to my website, chewjitsu.net/join, and then you'll join up, and then you'll get my daily email afterwards. You can unsubscribe at any time, and you keep those ebooks for free. But if not, you'll join the thousands of people that like reading my daily emails. And so, guys, with that said, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the heck out of you, as always. And we'll talk to you next week.